Good day, everyone. We are the Group 11, and we will be discussing to you the topic population and demography. So, I am Deck Cadet Harlan Jerleshera, and I will be the one who will begin the report. So, first, we have the chapter objectives. So, first is discuss the elements of population. Second is evaluate and explain the merits and defects of Malthus theory. And lastly, we have examine other views on population growth. So, according to Sullivan, population is a total number of people inhabiting a particular geographical area at a specified time. So for we have the Philippines population. So the population on to date on date 2000 on the year 2011, the population was 91,983,000. So as you can see at the end of the 2014, the population grows grows so much bigger that it reached 100 million. So as you can see, the gap is very big in the population growth here in the Philippines. So the demography sources. So first is we have the census. The second one we have the vital statistics. So what are these two? So these two are the sources for the demography. So this is their basis in collecting data. So first in the census we have the head counting of entire population. So we have the name, age, the gender, education, occupation, and one's residence. So it is pretty common in each and one of us. So next we have the vital statistics. So the vital statistics talk about the birth, marriage, death, and migration. So next, we have the elements of population. So we have fertility, mortality, and migration affected by economic conditions, sociocultural norms, values, and patterns of society. So example, so for fertility and mortality, they are largely affected by financial status of the family. Also, the several studies revealed that there are higher rates of fertility and mortality among the lower sector of the community, while lower rates among the upper sector of the community. So in real life situation, so as you can see in the squatter areas, you can see that in the squatter areas are or the slums is considered the lower sector. So as you can see, the fertility rate and mortality rate are very much higher than compared to those in the upper sector. So as you can see in the upper sector, the rich people, as you can see that they rarely have 3 to 4 or 5 to 6 children in their household. So mostly they have 1, 2, or minimum or maximum of 3. So and migration is affected by physical situation of the place. So it is pretty self-explanatory that migration is affected by the physical situation of the place. So we have fertility. Okay, so for fertility, yeah, it is the ability. So fertility is according to Zulueta and Liwag, it is the ability to produce offspring. So it measures the birth rate by fecundity. So that means that the woman's potential for childbearing. So in the age of 15 to 45, so that is fecundity and fertility. So to measure it, we may get the crude birth rate or CBR, which is the number of registered live birth per 1,000 of the population in the given area at a specific time. So here we have the formula and example. So the crude birth rate, so in 1,000 equals 35,415 over 678,120. So for the result is the crude birth rate will be 52.53. So a more reliable measure is the age-specific fertility rate. So this refers to the number of live births per 1,000 women of childbearing age to 15 to 45-year-old. So we have here the ASFR times 1,000. So equals 18,200 over 279,880. And age-specific fertility rate we have is 65.10. So the 65.10 is the live births per 1,000 women that are able to bear child at the age of 15 to 45 years old. So next, we have the mortality. So mortality is the measure of the rate of death in population. So it is affected by wealth. Hence, poor countries have a higher rate of infant mortality and short rates. So as you can see in real life situations, those who are at the lower sector has a higher um, at the lower sector rate, though they have the higher more fertility, but also they have the higher, but also their mortality is high because than the wealthy ones. It is because the lower sector can't afford or sustain the food or the needs of their family. That's why they live shorter life than the wealthy ones. So here we have the formula for the mortality. So CDR 1000 equals registered number of death in a year over the total population times. So other way of measuring mortality is through age specific death rate. So we have age specific death rate. So earlier we have the ASFR, which is age specific fertility rate. Now we have the death rate. So we have ASDR 1000 equals number of deaths of certain age group over total population, and that you will get the result of the age specific death rate. So next. So migration. So what is migration? So the migration is the movement of a person or group of people from one place to another in order to establish residence. So the types of migration. So we have immigration, which is moving out of the place, and immigration means moving into the place, and lastly, internal migration, movement within a country. So let me further explain this. So for the immigration, so simply put, it is moving out of the place. So for example, here from the Philippines, I decided to immigrate to Japan. So that's what we call the immigration, because I have moved from one place to another. So the immigration means moving into the place. So the act of moving into the place and permanently living in there means immigration. So when I moved from Philippines to Japan, so my act in going to Japan, moving into Japan, so making it permanently my household or my livelihood there. So that's what we call the immigration. So internal migration is movement within a country. So for example, from it is just like moving from one state to another. So the same country it is just in your country, but you're moving one state to another state. So one place to another, but within your country.
So I am Mark Japet Esotelieza, and to continue what he has discussed, so this my topic is the push and pull factor of migration. So what are the push and pull factor? But first, I will explain to you what is push factor of migration. So it refers to the unfavorable conditions in a place which compel a person or group to move out. And an example ani kay common push factors kay kanang are low productivity, unemployment and underdevelopment, poor economic conditions, lack of opportunities for advancement, and exhaustion of natural resources and calamities. And then let's move to pull factor. So it refers to the favorable conditions in a place which compels a person or group to move in. So unsa man ang mga examples ay unsa may mga kuan nga maka-pull sa mga tao. So ang mga examples ay kay opportunities for better employment, higher wages, facilities, better working conditions, and attractive amenities are pull factors of an area. So, theories of population growth. According to Reverend Thomas Robert Malthus in 1824, claimed that even if the food supply would increase, it would not be enough to feed the entire population that was growing so fast. He recommended that people should delay marriage or refrain from having sex. And I kinda agree to this because even thus the food supply increase, it wouldn't entirely feed the overgrowing population. There's still people that can't eat 3 meals in a day. And Malthusians insist that natural as well as artificial means of birth control must be used to control population. They accuse highly industrialized nations for being so greedy by consuming large amount of world's resources, even if they have smaller population. You can see that in other countries. So Ehrlich agreed with Neo-Malthusians that is the rich countries which excessively damage the world's resources, ignoring the ill effect which will be experienced by the world's poor and future generation. So makakuan juga na ang mga big countries karon kay they are more greedy than the small countries because they want to get resources in anyone's hometown or in country. Yeah, I like that. And why is zero population is alarming? Neo-Malthusians also strongly recommend that couples should limit their children to only 2 in order to attain ZPG or zero population growth. We mean the state of population where the number of births and immigrants is equal to the number of deaths and immigrants, Baleao and Parcon 140. And Ben Wattenberg book writes, population will age, the customer base will shrink, there will be labor shortages, and tax base will decline. Pensions will be cut, retirement ages will increase. And there's also theory by Paul and Anne Ehrlich, together with their Stanford University colleague Gretchen Daly, suggested that world population should be around 2 billion, which was the number of the people who were alive in 1930s. To achieve this goal, the number of children in the family should be limited to only 2. Among developed countries, the break-even point of population comes at around 2.1 children per couple. But the suggested population was not, it was break because recently the population today is 8 billion. Relationship between population and economic situation. Too many people is not the problem, but too many poor people who are oppressed by the rich sector of the community, severe poverty, therefore, is the problem. Premanlai in 2005 claimed that if only all people are rich, then there's no such thing as overpopulation. But if all people are rich, who will kuan sa mga manpower, like mga common mga trabaho, like nga na, like sa mga malls, isa may mukuan nga na kung ato ang kilabutan kay puros na lang mga dato, wala tay manpower kayo. And then, well, okay man, but we need people nga mukuan sa good kanang, well, it sounds like kanang selfish, but kanang mas mo work ang kalibutan kung naay kanang mga ingana, like mga nagtrabaho nga ordinary trabaho like constructions. Dili man siguro nato mabuhat kung wala pud na sila. So I kinda disagree to this, but yeah, maybe it's good na tanan tao nga dato. So to proceed, Philippines. In Philippines, overpopulation is considered as the major source of poverty. Many Filipino economists and government officials claim that it causes massive use of natural resources and too much spending in education, food, shelter, and healthcare. That is all for me, and the next presenter is Renzo Gabriel C. Sanchez. Thank you.
The only way to regulate population growth is through genuine education of the couples, and by encouraging the use of family planning, especially among the poor families. With the signing of reproductive health into law, the long wait of more than 10 years is over now. We shall wait once again what will happen to the Philippines in terms of its population and economic conditions. The superstition of population growth. Believing that lower population brings about faster economic growth, many countries emphasize and even enforce family planning and birth control programs. 1 peso spent on birth control program can save 8 to 9 pesos in expenditures on social services. But this wrong economic theory, others call it superstition, has been disproved by new studies which show that after all, it is the industrialized country that is the real cause behind the wide gap between population and available resources. This scenario proves that Marx was right when he argued that capitalism was the cause for all social ills, not the rising world population nor the poor. For him, there was no significant relationship between population and food supply as claimed by Malthus. He insisted that capitalism used their resources to build business empires for their own interest instead of equitably distributing food and other necessity of life. To solve the problem, it takes a very strong political will to stop the imprudent and responsible consumption of the world's resources by the rich nations. In the Philippines, it is recommended that NGOs and GOs must join forces and resources to solve an uncontrolled population growth through education, because it has been proven many times that education is the best weapon to fight overpopulation. In fact, the study conducted by De Guzman and Dr. Barrow show that higher education attainment is associated with fewer children in the family. Both studies imply that the longer the individual stays in school to complete their studies, there is a better chance of reducing population. This schooling and education are the better option of regulating births. In his research, De Guzman noted that women who marry in their mid-20s will reduce virginity for about 3 children in their average. In other words, women who marry in their period of fertility compared to women who marry in their mid or late 20s. On the other hand, Dr. Robert Barrow concluded that women's high educational attainment reduces population growth and is the basis for high education. Enrollment of both males and females of the next generation. Indeed, adequate education is important because it strongly influences the mental and emotional disposition of their individual, making them more open to changes. Thus, it would be relatively easy to make some relevant social changes in the community because well-educated persons who are more aware of their social obligation and more concerned for improvement. Villages claim that some recent economic studies reveal that many of nations attributed the economical success to political stability, macroeconomic stability, as focus on early education, as emphasizes on agricultural development and market-oriented economic policies, but silent about overpopulation as a major cause of mass poverty. What aggravates the crisis is water shortage due to rising temperature. Brown reported that even Saudi Arabia that enjoyed sufficient supplies of wheat for the last 20 years is in danger of shortage of wheat production because the quicker the country used for irrigation is largely depleted. So, population growth, conversions of grains into fuel, climate change and water shortage are contributing factors why the ability to grow food has become a nightmare throughout the world. The first sign of nightmare came in 2007 when farmers had difficulty keeping up with the increasing world demand for grain, which triggered an increase in food prices. In order to control the rise of food prices in their own backyard, exporting countries restricted the expectation of the grains, while others totally banned exporting for months. Importing countries like the Philippines started to panic to address the problems. The Philippines successfully negotiated a 3-year agreement with Vietnam for 1.5 million tons of rice a year. On the other hand, other rich countries brought or list in other countries like the Philippines where they grow grains for their own consumption. World Bank aptly called these land grabs, which, according to Brown, contributed more to inciting conflicts and courting disaster rather than to increase food production. Land grabbing, water grabbing, and buying grains directly from farmers in exporting countries are not the cure to growing food insecurity. The world should not focus on the real causes like population growth and climate change before we experience the horror of possible breakdown in the food system, which is now so close. The time to act is now. Family must reduce the number of children. We have to shift the smaller families. We must be socialized, responsible, and environmental friendly. We have to conserve energy, use water wisely, and eat more vegetable than meat. Suggested community outreach activity. Coordinate with community outreach offices and community leading of the school adopted barangay, then get the total number of people living in the school adopted by barangay or your own community.